you guys got into wrestling at the same time? Did you start training before Nikki? Did Nikki start training before you? How did that all sort of work?
Yeah, Nikki started training before me actually. Maybe only like a month or two. But I remember she kind of told me, I don't know, I think it was like in a little conversation we had that she was actually doing some professional wrestling, and I almost got super jealous because I was like, wow, how could you not tell me?
Oh no.
So yeah, so I finally got that chance when she was like, told me this is where I'm doing it at. If you want to come by and try it out one Friday night, and I jumped right in. I was like, heck yes, I do.
Oh man. So you got into it. What can you tell me about like wrestling school, getting the training? Walk me through like the training process.
Well, it's long, that's for sure. It's not something where you can really just like jump in and within a month or two, you're ready to go. I'm an avid runner. I like to do 5Ks and stuff like that too. With a 5K, you could really take maybe 4 to 6 weeks and almost be ready for a 5K. But with
Sure.
professional wrestling, it's one of those things where you have to build those foundations and kind of build from that foundation up until you're really ready to actually be in the ring and work. So it's strenuous. It's tough on the body, especially with the training. We were going 2 to 3 nights a week, sometimes 4 nights a week. So it's exhausting too because you're working that from 7 to 9 and trying to come home and unwind after a long night of practice, and then you got to turn around the next day, go to work, and get back in the ring and do it again. So it's strenuous, it's time consuming, and it definitely wears on the body. But
Mm-hmm.
once you have those foundations built and you're about a year into it, you can finally start to see the bigger picture as you're working towards it, and it starts to become more of a realistic goal. Because I can tell you, man, we were we were probably about 6 months into it, and we were still kind of working on just some of the basic drills and lockups and stuff like that, and just thinking about going out and having a whole match was something that I couldn't kind of grasp in my head because we just weren't there yet. But almost like after a year into it, working with Duff Doyle, working with Eric Angel, working with Adrian Grimm and all those guys at the butcher shop, and finally going in and working some matches and having them kind of explain it to us. This is how it goes. This is how you build a match. It was great because that's finally we got to see everything we had been building on that foundation and see how it applies to working it in the ring. And it almost all clicked at one time, and you're like, oh, okay, so this is how this all works together.
It's definitely a different um animal than, you know, doing stuff like running or doing any other form of athletics, because you're pushing yourself like to the bone almost. Like with running, it's like, yeah, it's good for your heart rate and cardio, but when you're actually like physically doing something where you're taking so many, you know, bumps on the ground, you're falling constantly on the ground, or you know, you're just laying it in, with
Yep.
another person. It's so much different because it involves a lot of pain, you know.
Yep. Yeah. The only thing I could really ever compare it to is when I was in high school football, and back then we really practiced full pads almost the whole week. They didn't really slow things down, and it's like almost being mid-season football practice after you've been practicing and going through all those games, and your body's worn down, but you still know you have like 3 weeks of games left, so you got to keep pushing through those practices. But that's almost every week with professional wrestling because if you're taking those bumps in the ring, those small impacts, they add up. So, being able to kind of work through that soreness and being smart too to realize that, like, oh man, maybe this isn't just sore, maybe I do have an injury and I kind of got to sit out or take it back too, is really important.
Were there any injuries that you experienced when you first got, started training, started working out?
The only ones that I had were just some bursitis in my knees and my elbows. Um, that's really been the only one that's kind of been persistent, where I kind of had to take maybe a day or two off just because the worst one was my elbow kind of locked up at one point. But once I got better elbow pads and knee pads, I kind of helped that one out a lot better too.
That's good. It's always good to, protect yourself, protect your body, protect your opponent. Um, Now, what pieces of advice did you take away from your training that you still utilize to this day?
The biggest one is just always listening to, especially in the ring, whether it's to the crowd for the reaction of how the match is going, or to your opponent. So you guys are making sure you're listening to each other and keeping each other safe with what's going on in the ring too. You always got to be listening. You can't go into the ring, single-minded focus. You got to be able to have that open mind, listening, ready for things to change on the fly too, because you may have something planned in the back that sounded real cool, and then something doesn't work out in the ring the way you thought it was going to, and you got to change it on the fly. And that's where being able to adjust, listen, and work together is really important.